children will be kept in one of our shelters. Please call 0800 055 7321 or search Safe Sleep and help give children like Iman a safe bed.
What makes a car not just beautiful, but beautifully made? Is it the engineering, the precision finish, the detailing, the handling? Or is it the way it makes you feel? The award-winning Seat Leon range, beautifully made in Barcelona.
This autumn, Valco has some exciting additions to its range. As well as the old favourites. And it's always great value.
Any chance of a 3 for 2?
Watch brand new Trolling as part of your comedy controlled diet. Starts Monday at 9 on Sky One.
All of your favorite Pixar movies, all in one place.
Whoa, we going in there?
Yep. Sky Cinema Disney Pixar. Available now.
The government says it will appeal after the High Court rules it can't trigger Brexit without Parliament's approval. Cost of living is set to rise, but the Bank of England upgrades its forecast for growth. All to play for in the US presidential election, as the latest poll suggests that Hillary Clinton is still ahead despite the investigation against her. Thousands of civilians flee Mosul as the Iraqi army says it's pushed further into the Islamic State held city. The chair of the owners of the Olympic Stadium resigned after Sky News reveals the staggering cost of converting the ground to West Ham. And from Stonington to new food will be discussing new words that have made it into the dictionary this year.
Good boy.
Hello, very good afternoon. This is Sky News at 3. The government says it will appeal a ruling by the High Court that bars Stephen May from the triggering Brexit without the approval of Parliament. The landmark decision means MPs and peers will have a vote on whether to trigger Article 50, the mechanism for leaving the EU. Brexit Secretary David Davis says the will of the people must be respected.
The result of the referendum must be respected. Parliament voted by 6 to 1 to give the decision to the people. No ifs or buts. And that's why we are appealing us to get on with delivering the best deal for Britain. That's the best deal for growth, the best deal for investment, the best deal for jobs. The people want us to get on with it. That's what we intend to do.
Well, the case was brought by a number of claimants. The lawyer for one of them, Dear John Santos, gave this reaction at that court.
This is a victory for parliamentary democracy. In her speech to the Conservative Party conference, the Prime Minister attacked me for bringing these proceedings as a claimant. She said that I was trying to subvert democracy. That was an unwarranted and irresponsible attack. As is my constitutional right, I sought the protection of the court to stop unlawful government action. The court has now given me that protection. I now hope that everyone will respect the court's decision so that Parliament will now make a decision in relation to the service of the Article 50 notice.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says the decision highlights the confusion in the UK government's position, while Jeremy Corbyn has said the decision is a positive step for the country's future.
Looking at the judgment very carefully, and yes, we will actively consider whether or not there is a case for the Scottish Government to become participants in that case. We should remember that their refusal to allow a vote in the House of Commons is not some matter of high constitutional principle. It's because they don't have a coherent position, and they know that if they take their case to the House of Commons, that will be exposed. The job of this government is to protect Scotland's interests. Scotland voted to remain in the EU, and my job is therefore to protect our place in Europe and in the single market as far as I possibly can.
Parliament has to have a say in this. These are crucial decisions for the future of this country. We're going to be looking at the issue of market access to Europe. We're going to be looking at the future of manufacturing industry, looking at the access of finance services to Europe, and of course, crucially, workplace regulations, environmental regulations, and consumer rights.
Bringing our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's standing by at Downing Street for us this afternoon. Goodness me, this is a blow. However you look at it.
It's a very serious blow, and there's no hiding the disappointment of not just the Prime Minister, but Brexiteers like David Davis and indeed Liam Fox, who was forced to respond instantly in the House of Commons when the news came through. It's more than a disappointment, though. It's a huge setback. The government's going to have to work out a way to respond to this. Now, yes, they are appealing. That is likely to be held, we believe, on the 7th of December. Well, if it's like this one we just had, it'll be a week or so after that that we get the result of that appeal. If, of course, the government loses in the Supreme Court, my goodness, they're in big trouble. What we do know from number 10 today is that a minister, almost certainly David Davis, will make a common statement explaining what the government intends to do now. That will be on Monday, while the Prime Minister is on a trade trip to India. So the Prime Minister is also going to talk to Jean-Claude Juncker. MPs are all speculating and saying what the government ought to do. Some say just a one-clause bill would do the job. That could be rushed through Parliament. Ken Clarke was talking about the possibility of late-night sittings in Parliament while all this is debated when he raised a question to the Leader of the Commons earlier today. There are those MPs who say that if the courts are going to frustrate the will of the people, that makes the case for an early general election stronger. Of course, we should point out Theresa May's always ruled that out, because of course she talks about going the full term to 2020. Those MPs who think there should be an early election argue, well, things have changed dramatically. Well, in a rare intervention in the whole Brexit debate, George Osborne has been speaking today up in Manchester. He says the important thing is to sort out Britain's trade and business relationships with the rest of Europe.
For me, to be honest, the question is not who makes the decision on whether we're leaving the European Union, because the public have made that decision in the referendum. I think the sooner we get on to the substantive discussion in Parliament with the government about the nature of our new relationship with Europe, how are we going to trade with these key partners of ours like Germany and France, how businesses here in Manchester and across the country are going to have the certainty so that they can invest and hire people over the next couple of years. For me, these are the key issues, and I will be arguing for the closest possible trading and economic relationship with Europe outside of the EU, because we've got to respect the referendum.
So although it's a shock to start with, I mean, wouldn't we assume that Parliament would generally vote in favour of Brexit anyway, even if it was put to the vote?
Even those who are sometimes unkindly dubbed Remoners, the Remainers, have said they're not going to try and frustrate the will of the people. For example, Hilary Benn, pro-European, pro-Remain, who's just been elected the chairman of that Brexit Select Committee, he says he'll vote for it. So you would expect the Commons to vote, even though a majority of the MPs, it's something like 400 and some to 150 or a couple of hundred in favour of Remain. Tories are roughly split half and half. The majority of Labour MPs are for Remain. But it would be extraordinary if the House of Commons chucked out the decision of the referendum back in June. The other question, of course, for the government is the timetable, assuming that, of course, it's not chucked out by Parliament. Now, number 10 has said today that the Prime Minister is still confident that our plans remain to invoke Article 50 by the end of March. That was always Theresa May's plan as she set out on the opening day of the Tory party conference. There are those who think, given that this is now going to the Supreme Court, that could delay things, and possibly Theresa May's timetable is another thing that is in some jeopardy now. But of course, the whole thing has just become more and more complicated, a legal battle on top of a parliamentary battle. And clearly, those who want more parliamentary scrutiny, well, they are cock-a-hoop today because they're now going to get that, it looks like.
Okay, John, thank you. On days like this, it's great to speak to someone who knows a little bit about constitutional law. Joining us is Michael Gordon from the University of Liverpool, and he fulfills that criteria for us. Hello to you, Michael. It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Where does this leave the government?
Well, it leaves the government on the end of very, very significant key factors. obviously in terms of the outcome of the case, but also I think in terms of the tone of the judgment as well, we've seen from the High Court today. The Secretary of State's arguments were described by the judges as being flawed in a very basic sense. So it really is quite a strong judgment that the government's on the losing end of here. I suppose what the case is ultimately about is a clash of different sort of visions of the Constitution. And perhaps one thing that will console the government today as they appeal on to the Supreme Court is that in a previous case in Northern Ireland at the High Court last week, they did actually win. And the High Court of Northern Ireland was much more receptive to the government's argument about this being about the appropriate balance of power between Parliament acting at the domestic level and the government acting on the international level. So perhaps as they take the appeal forward to the Supreme Court, they'll look to rely on the sort of the arguments that they made in the Northern Irish Court, which is at least find favour there.
Yes, but if you get to the Supreme Court and they still rule against you, they're in a lot of trouble then, aren't they?
That's right. And it really changes potentially the dynamics of Parliament's involvement in the Brexit process quite significantly, because we move away from just Parliament being involved in scrutinising the government's negotiations and its position as it tries to negotiate a withdrawal from the European Union after Article 50 is triggered potentially in March, to effectively Parliament being given the authority to take that decision itself about whether we should leave the European Union at all. And that will raise a whole different set of arguments again that we've visited in quite a divisive referendum campaign, and Parliament will be absolutely at the centre of that, and deciding exactly what weight or authority they attribute to the referendum vote will be a very contentious matter indeed.
Okay, so whatever happens, even if the government wins on appeal, this process is delayed now, is it, or not necessarily?
It's not entirely clear. I mean, there are different ways that the government could try and engage with what the High Court has said today. So in your clip before, it was mentioned that there might be a one-line act of Parliament or a one-line bill rushed through to try and provide the necessary authority. Obviously, that's going to limit the kind of scrutiny that Parliament can take in relation to this development. And it will be interesting to see if the House of Commons in particular would let that go forward. There are a different set of issues as well, of course, with the House of Lords, where if the Commons is representative and they feel more directly bound by the referendum result, the House of Lords is known to be much more strongly pro-European Union, and that may present a real sticking point for the government as they try and sort of progress legislation to authorise the Article 50 trigger through. So there could be delays, although, as we said before, the government does, at the moment at least, seem to think it can bring the Article 50 forward at the end of March.
And if we bring this down to its basic level, this is unelected judges deciding their view on the will of the people.
So, I mean, it's certainly the court's wading in a very bold fashion to one of the most controversial political debates that we've seen. And the High Court judgment is quite surprising, in that it is very stark and strong in its criticism of the government's argument. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of tack the Supreme Court takes on appeal there, whether sort of the political aspects of the case influence their judgment at all, or influence the way that they respond to the different arguments that the claimants and the government are going to present at that point.
Okay, great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
Time to look now at some of today's other main stories. We hear on Guy Ferguson, who died during a training exercise on Tuesday evening, has been named by the Ministry of Defence as Lance Corporal Joe Spencer from 3rd Battalion, the Rifles. The chair of the group who owned London Stadium, David Edmonds, has resigned after an investigation was opened into the cost of converting the venue. It comes after Sky News learned that the taxpayer-funded costs to turn the Olympic Stadium into West Ham United's new home have risen from £272 million to £323 million. 239 migrants have died in 2 shipwrecks off the Libyan coast, the United Nations has announced. It was confirmed by 2 survivors who were rescued in the Italian island of Lampedusa. 4,220 lives have been lost so far this year in the Mediterranean. We'll be speaking to the UN Refugee Agency about this later this hour. The pensions regulator has stepped up the pressure on Sir Philip Green over the collapse of BHS, taking action on behalf of 20,000 BHS pension scheme members, confirming a story first reported by Sky News. Sir Philip could be forced to pay millions in pensions back home.
The regulators has started to enact the law. The law requires him to participate in these actions. She's obviously run out of patience with him, as the pensioners did and Parliament did, a long time ago and has now said the legal processes is working, I will come up with a sum, and if that's adjudicated as fair, you're going to have to pay.
An extra 2,500 prison officers will be hired and no-fly zones imposed after a government review. It aims to tackle the amount of drugs, drones and mobile phones being smuggled behind bars. The Justice Secretary admitted that violence in jails has reached unacceptable levels and reoffending rates are far too high. Now, Brexit has beaten Trumpism and dude food to be named the word of the year by the Collins Dictionary. Use of the word Brexit has seen a 3,400% increase, which the dictionary publisher says is unheard of. Dude food has been described as junk food that men find particularly appealing, such as hot dogs and burgers, while Trumpism covers the policies of US presidential candidates. Donald Trump. We'll be discussing all of these words later this hour. Bank of England says the cost of living is going up next year. It held interest rates at 0.25% and significantly raised predicted economic growth.
Whereas monetary policy cannot construct the edifice of lasting prosperity, but it can help build its foundations by achieving the inflation target in a sustainable fashion and in a way that helps smooth real adjustments to the economy, in a way that stabilizes growth and supports jobs in the wake of much larger forces. This is the best contribution the MPC can make to the good of the people of the United States.
Ian King, who's in central London for us. Who knows whether it's going to be staying on longer, given the decisions that have been made in the High Court today. But in the meantime, it's certainly aims to know if he's still there. Were you expecting, what were you expecting with him today?
Okay, we've had some really quite dramatic changes from the Bank of England to its forecast, not only for GDP growth, but also to the inflationary outlook. And I guess these were expected by the market, but they are still nonetheless pretty surprising. Those changes to the GDP forecast first, the bank is now expecting growth of 2.2% this year, up from 2% in its previous forecast in August. It's also expecting growth of 1.4% next year, up from 0.8% in August. Now, that's the biggest upward revision from one of the bank's forecasts in just a 3-monthly period that anyone can remember. However, further down the line, 2018, the bank is now expecting growth of 1.5%, down from 1.8% in August. In other words, the bank is still expecting there to be some pain from Brexit and from the triggering of Article 50 when it happens. But that pain is being pushed further into the future because the bank is now recognising that the economy, contrary to a lot of expectations, didn't fall off the cliff immediately after the Leave vote. Now, on the inflation front, this is really interesting, Kate. The bank is now expecting higher inflation this year, 1.3% instead of 0.8%, but the big jumps come in subsequent years. Next year, the bank is now expecting inflation of 2.7%, up from 2%, and in the following year, 2018, of 2.75%, up from 2.4%, and in 2019, inflation of 2.5%. Now, bear in mind that the bank's mandate is for an inflation target of 2%. This is a big overshoot. Over the next 3 years, the bank is going to be exceeding its inflation target by quite some distance. And Mr. Carney has said that he's quite happy, the bank is happy to tolerate inflation above its target rate for a short period because the payoff would be higher unemployment. Unemployment's going to rise anyway, by the way.
Good, yeah, thank you. So he's with her, that's his campaign slogan. And here he is.
care of that. But I noticed gas at $1.99. The reason I make this point is because I think in 2008 they were predicting that if Obama got elected, gas would be $6. So sometimes it's useful to check the tape. See what they said before. It turns out what they said was wrong. So what that means is what they're saying now is probably also wrong. Anyway, I just wanted to do that little detour. But in addition to, right, thanks Obama. Yeah. So, kicked our addiction on foreign oil, doubled our production of clean energy, have done more to battle climate change than any time in our history. We're world leaders on that. We brought home more of our men and women in uniform. Took out Osama bin Laden. Are systematically rolling up ISIL in Iraq. And by the way, back home, we made sure that in all 50 states, people have the freedom to marry who they want. So there's a reason that I've got gray hair. Because I've been busy. And most of all, across these 50 states that I've traveled, what I've seen is the thing that really makes America great. No, it's you. I've seen the American people. People of every party, every faith, every race, every region. People who know we're stronger together. Young and old folks, men and women, black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, folks with disabilities, gay, straight folks. Doesn't matter, all of us pledging allegiance to the red, white, and blue. That's the America I know. That's the America we love. And there's only one candidate in this race who has devoted her life to building up that America. And that is the next president of the United States of America, Hillary Clinton. And make no mistake, Florida, all the progress we made goes out the window if we don't win this election. So we've got to work our hearts out this week. We got to work like our future depends on it because it actually depends on it. And listen, especially for the young people out there, I know some of you, this is your first election where you've been paying attention. And you're out there and you're looking at it and you're saying, man, this is really nasty. You know, generally, DC is not so much of a battleground, but down here, it's just like every ad is just depressing. And there's negative ads, and there's noise, and there's distractions. And sometimes the temptation is to tune it out, and you want to just focus on the Cubs winning the World Series. Which, by the way, even for a White Sox fan, is a pretty big deal. Because the Cubs have been waiting like 108 years. I was watching something on television, they explained that the last time the Cubs had won, Thomas Edison was alive, and they hadn't invented sliced bread yet. So, you know the expression, is the greatest thing since sliced bread? This is actually, for Cubs fans, the greatest thing since sliced bread. I want to congratulate the Chicago Cubs for an amazing season. But it's tempting to want to not really focus on our government, our politics, but this election is say, go ahead and sue me because I got more money than you, and you can't do anything about it. It's not fair. Here's somebody who, for decades, has refused to release any tax returns. And maybe it's because he's not as rich as he says he is, but he has admitted he does not pay federal income taxes for years. Not a dime. So he's not helping to support our troops or our veterans. He's not helping to build roads or build schools or help young people finance a college education because he's not putting anything in. He's taking a lot out, but hasn't put anything in. It says that he's going to be his own foreign policy advisor. He says that's because he's got a good brain. Now, I won't opine on his brain. What I can say is that anybody who suggests that America should torture people or ban entire religions from entering America or insults POWs or attacks a Gold Star model, don't move. Or talks down about our troops, that's not somebody who's fit to be president. Listen, you even had a Republican senator saying you cannot afford to give the nuclear codes to somebody so erratic. And as Hillary points out, anybody that you can bait with a tweet is not someone you can trust with nuclear weapons. Anybody who is upset about a Saturday Night Live skit, you don't want in charge of nuclear weapons. No, I'm serious. This is a guy who tweets. They should cancel Saturday Night Live. I don't like how Alex Bowman's imitating me. Really? I mean, that's the thing that bothers you and you want to be president of the United States? Come on, man. Come on. I think the thing, but you know what? We have to be honest. He's got support here in Florida. He's got some support around the country. No, he does. If he didn't, then I wouldn't have to go around get everybody to vote. He's got some support. And the most frustrating thing is some of his support's coming from working folks. People say, well, he's going to be our voice. Are you serious? This is a guy who spent 70 years, his whole life, born with a silver spoon, showing no respect for working people. He spent a lot of time with celebrities, spends a lot of time hanging out with the really wealthy folks, but you don't see him hanging out with working people unless they're cleaning his room or mowing the fairways on his golf club. You're going to make this guy your champion if you're a working person? Come on. Somebody who spent his life without ever showing any regard for working folks. But he has insulted minorities and immigrants and Muslims and Americans with disabilities. That's the voice you want? You want a voice who's bragging about how being famous lets you get away with what would qualify as sexual assault and calls women pigs and dogs and slobs. And when he pays attention to women, it's because he's grading them on a scale of 1 to 10. What kind of message are we sending? If that's our voice. I tell you what, we're going to teach our kids. I want to teach all American kids that our diversity is our strength. That in America, it's not about what you look like, but who you are and what you do and what your character is. That women are not just full and equal citizens, they may be a lot more capable of doing what a man can do. TDIs. I know that's not a word, but you get my drift. It's become normal when somebody just says wacky stuff. As long as they're famous, we think it's okay. I mean, and you hear people justifying it. They're all like, well, you know, maybe it's just locker room talk. Or I don't really like what he's saying, but as long as he supports Republican policies and he cuts taxes for the wealthy, that's what I care about. Saying character doesn't matter. Let me tell you something about this office that I've been in for 8 years. Who you are, what you are, does not change after you occupy the Oval Office. All it does is magnify who you are. All it does is shine a spotlight on who you are. If you disrespected women before you were in office, you will disrespect women as president. If you accept the support of Klan sympathizers before you are president, you will accept their support after you're president. If you disrespect the Constitution before you're president and threaten to shut down the press when it says something you don't like, or threaten to throw your opponent in jail in a live presidential debate without any regard for due process, if you discriminate against people of different faiths before you are president, then that is what you will do in office, except you will have more power to carry out the twisted notions that you had before you were in office. So you can't make excuses for this stuff. This isn't a joke. This isn't Survivor. This isn't The Bachelorette. This counts. This has to do with what's going to happen in your family, in your community, the soldiers and veterans, the safety of our kids. Listen, I'm a strong Democrat, but I tell you what, we aren't born Democrats or Republicans. We're Americans first. And I have good friends who are Republicans, and I know they don't think this way about women. They don't think this way about Muslims. They don't think this way about immigrants. What they are doing is something different entirely. It is different from what we have seen before. And the good news is all of you are uniquely qualified to make sure that this uniquely unqualified person does not become president. And all you got to do is make sure that you go out there and you vote. And the other good news is you don't just have to vote against this guy, because you have a candidate who's actually worthy of your vote. Somebody who's smart, somebody who is steady, somebody who is tested. Perhaps the most qualified person ever to run for this office, our next president, Hillary Clinton. This is somebody who has dedicated her life to making this country better. Think about how she got her start. While Donald Trump and his developer dad were being sued by the Justice Department for denying housing to African-American families, Hillary was going undercover from school to school to make sure minority kids were getting an equal shot at a good education. She has not stopped fighting for justice, fighting for equality ever since. Her heart's always been in the right place. Works hard every single day. I know she worked hard when she was running against me. I was worn out. She worked hard when she was working for me. She was there in the Situation Room as my Secretary of State, making the argument to go after Bin Laden even when it was risky. Circled the globe as Secretary of State, earning the respect of world leaders. Her efforts weren't always flashy, they weren't always fully efficient, which is true for a lot of the work that women do, by the way. she's got to work hard because you were out there working. She doesn't whine or complain or blame others.
Big strap.
She just works harder. She just comes back better because she knows no matter how hard things may be for her, there are a lot of people who are having an even tougher time trying to pay the bills, or trying to find a job, or trying to finance a college education. But she doesn't have time to whine. She just gets up and does the work.
Wow. Emma Walker is in Jacksonville in Florida for us. Hello to you. Donald Trump will be speaking there later on. We've been listening to what President Obama had to say. That was a tough thumping speech, wasn't it?
Wasn't it just more emphatic?
Look at someone!
Really, I suppose for those folks in the room there, convincing reasons to go for Hillary Clinton. I don't think that speech will go down as well as this would, but really, we've got it this now for President Obama as well, for his legacy. He said in that speech,
Where'd he go? Where'd he go?
8 years ago,
Sit.
Obamacare, for example, his
Sit.
signature.
Ready?
Trump says he would repeal and replace it. So much
Sit.
of what President Obama started
Sit.
is dependent on Hillary Clinton continuing. I think
Ready, what's this?
the way he is speaking. I think that there's an acceptance that they're not going to change people's minds.
Ready, what's this? Sit.
Not until February though.
I'm not enjoying it. Oh, is that your correct stuff? Yeah,
I'll
I'm
read
going
the
to
letter properly again.
sit. Come on, man.
Can you take his Kong out, please, Imogen? To the kitchen.